Hey, and welcome to Board of Life News for June 20th. Today I'm going to talk about Netrunner, Amun-Re the card game, Marvel Strike Teams, Vault of Dragons, and the Kickstarter for That's Not Lemonade. Let's get to it. Android Netrunner from Fantasy Flight Games will be ending its 6-year run. So it looks like Fantasy Flight Games lost the license to Netrunner from Wizards of the Coast, and they had set the Netrunner game in the Android universe, which Fantasy Flight Games owns. This seems like this was very unexpected. Fantasy Flight Games had recently rebooted the franchise with the second edition and had expansions planned to come out. Reign and Reverie Deluxe Expansion will be the final release for the game, and it's seeming like there have been some rumors of reports that there's not going to be a ton of copies of it available, so if you're into the game and you really want it, do your best to get it, because it seems like the license was pulled unexpectedly, so they probably had to stop printing at some point, and they have to sell all of their copies by the end of October, I believe, Fantasy Flight, per the licensing agreement. So it seems like it was very unexpected. So Wizards of the Coast, it's unclear what they want to do with Netrunner, because they don't own androids. They would have to license the Android universe from Fantasy Flight Games in order to print their own version of Android Netrunner. They own the Netrunner mechanics, but not the theme of the game, basically. So my guess is they're going to be doing something in some sort of cyberpunk universe, or some kind of cyberpunk role-playing game, or something like that, and they don't want the market to have more of that. I don't know. That's entirely just speculation. Yeah. So, obviously, if you're into Netrunner, it's a bummer. The tournament scene will go away. You know, the regular releases, all that stuff will go away. But if you've ever been interested in the game, now's a great time to get into it, because you probably, if you hadn't gotten into it at this point, getting into the tournament scene's like a pretty big leap. But if you're just playing the game with friends, you're about to be able to get like a ton of cards for super cheap, because everybody's going to be offloading their cards. And I always feel whenever stuff like this ends, or like, you know, there's a second edition of X-Wing or whatever, and people go like, oh, I'm out of it, it's terrible, blah, this is trash. It's like, you could play thousands of games of Netrunner with your friends with the cards that exist. You could play it for the rest of your life. And it's like, yeah, the tournament scene's going away, and I know that that's a lot of the fandom of the thing, but like, there's so many cards, and you can build so many decks that's like, oh, I can only play this game 10,000 times before I've seen all of it. Like, I do feel a little bit like that. So I encourage you to try to think, like, yeah, I know that if you're into the tournament scene, obviously that doesn't count. But if you're just into playing games with your friends, it doesn't matter if there's a ton of new cards coming out. There's so many cards, you can make any combination. So I encourage you to kind of like look at games that way, instead of this like totally consumer-y product that like, I have to have the newest thing, I have to have that to be competitive, whatever. It's like, just have fun with it. So anyway, that's my slight rant on that thing, and it's a bummer that Netrunner's ending. Amun-Re, the card game, is going to be getting a US release from Super Meeple. This game takes the core auction mechanics from the game Amun-Re, the Knizia classic, and re-implements them in a card game, which should be abundantly obvious from the title of the game. Knizia's had I don't even know, so Knizia feels like he's been having a bit of a resurgence of late, but I'm not positive if that's true. Certainly in the popularity of his games, he's found a new generation, but it feels like, man, there's a ton of releases. He must be designing all the time. But I'm realizing that a lot of the releases are just people picking up his old games and redoing the artwork and re-releasing them. That combined with actually new game releases from him, as well as games like this that are based off of his old games that are being designed. So there's a lot of Knizia games, but I mean, he's one of the greatest designers that's ever lived. A lot of people probably think he is the greatest designer that's ever lived. I'm not smart enough or bold enough to make such a claim, but certainly without question, in the hobby game world, in the fandom that we are, one of the best designers. So exciting to see more stuff from him. Marvel Strike Teams is coming out from WizKids. This uses the like HeroClix miniatures, but they aren't HeroClix miniatures. Don't get confused. This is not compatible with WizKids HeroClix stuff. This is a totally separate game, and I don't think the miniatures cross over at all. So this is going to be like a Descent-style game where you are superheroes. It's a 1v-all game where one player is playing against everyone, and the other players are all superheroes trying to take down the villains. It's going to let you upgrade your heroes as the campaign progresses, get new powers, that kind of stuff. That's exciting if you like superheroes. It's a kind of classic style of game that seems to be remaining popular. I will say, as Shut Up and Sit Down pointed out, the art direction, the visual style of this game looks amateurish. It looks like it came out 30 years ago. It looks like what I imagine a prototype at a company as big as like WizKids on the HeroClix side would put together. From the cover art down to all of it. I think games are at a point where they look better than this now. So I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm not saying it won't be fun. Any of that. But that's all I have to go off of because I've never played it. And it doesn't look great from that standpoint. Vault of Dragons is coming out from Gale Force 9. This will be a game set in the Dungeons & Dragons universe. Gale Force 9 has been doing a couple of these games lately. In the game, you're unsavory factions trying to find a hidden vault of gold underneath the city. It doesn't seem as much like a dudes on the map type of board as the like Dungeons & Dragons dungeon crawl games are. This is more of kind of like a hobby game in the Dungeons & Dragons theme. It's got tiles. I think you're going through tiles trying to investigate them and find clues and stuff. Wasn't 100% sure. There wasn't a ton of info on it. Some of Gale Force 9's Dungeons & Dragons games have been good. They've been pretty good, so I've got high hopes for this one because obviously I like that world a lot. And yeah. This week's Kickstarter is for That's Not Lemonade from Tuesday Night Games. This is a push-your-luck party-ish game where you are trying to drink the most lemonade without drinking something that is not lemonade. It's pee. It's a child's pee. You're trying to not drink a child's pee. As I said, it's very simple, kind of push your luck. You're taking cards, you're hoping that they're lemonade, you're hoping that it's not lemonade. I played this game way back. It's designed by Matt Fantastic when it was themed as You Mad Bro, and I had a great time with it at cons then. And then I've also played the prototype Tuesday Night Games was showing around. That is this game where it's themed as that. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those games that's like super, super rules light. But you laugh and high five and it's a fun game. It's also, they pointed out, I hadn't even really thought about this as a thing, but they call it an open table game where it's like you can come and go and it doesn't mess up the game. Like you can play one round and then walk away. I guess poker's an open table game now I think about it. But you can play one round and walk away and then come back a little bit later. So it's a great game to kind of have out at a party. You're only committing to like 2 minutes of gameplay when you sit down and play it. So yeah, cool stuff there. It is $10 right now on Kickstarter, so if that sounds interesting to you, go back that. Alright, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, as well as follow me on social media. I'm at Chris Bryan Games on Instagram and Twitter. Also, check out my Patreon, linked below. There are some cool different tiers where you get some stuff if you're the kind of person who really likes stuff. I do board game news videos every week, except next week, because I'll be in Canada, so I'm not going to do one next week. But after that, back to every week, as always. It's convention season, so there's a ton of announcements coming out. So if you want to keep up to date, definitely subscribe and or follow or all that stuff. This week's question comes from @Ithyla on Twitter. Ithyla on Twitter. I don't know. And it's a really good question. They ask, what's the best implementation of your least favorite mechanic? This is a great question. I wish I was kind of doing like a whole podcast episode on this or something so I could talk about it forever. But of all the things I condensed down, and I think Formula D with Roll and Move. So I don't know if Roll and Move is actually my least favorite mechanic. There's probably mechanics out there, like a memory mechanic or something that I actually like less. But I think Roll and Move is often one of the most derided mechanics. Derided? Is that a word? I don't know. It is certainly a mechanic that modern game design has gotten away from, and it is a mechanic that, in general, is bad because it takes agency away from players and then puts stuff up to randomness. Like, if you really want to do something in a game, and the game does not allow you to do that because of bad luck, that is a bad feeling, objectively, in a game, right? So, almost all modern board games have gone away from Roll and Move. I think that there's a place for every mechanic. I think that there are no bad mechanics. I think that there are just some that were overused and used in incorrect ways. I think this is a great example, Formula D, of using Roll and Move in the correct way. So Formula D, for those that are unaware, is a racing game. It's like a indie car race. I don't know. It's a car racing game. And at its very core, you're shifting gears. The lower gear you're in, the smaller die you roll. So like you're rolling like a D4 if you're in first gear. And then when you go up to fifth gear, it's like a D30. I don't actually know. It's more than a D20. And the numbers aren't, it's not like 1 through 30 on the D30 or whatever fictional die that is. I don't know if it's even physically possible to make a D30, but it'll go from like 20 through 30, right? So there'll be like 25 will be on it like 3 or 4 times. So the worst you could do is like a 20. The best you can do is like a 30. So it's not completely luck, right? You're pushing it. But then it has this push your luck mechanic where you have to stop a certain amount of times in corners. So like a little S-curve corner, you might have to stop 2 or 3 times, where one corner you only have to stop once. So you need to be constantly upshifting and downshifting because you can't like blow through a quarter or else you'll take a ton of damage and crash your car. So it's this like luck mitigation of like when to upshift, when to downshift, all based like so much of the core of that game is based around the roll and move mechanic. So I think that's a perfect implementation. I say it occasionally. I've said it a lot about Flamme Rouge, the cycling racing game that I really like, that like you feel like you're doing the thing. It's super thematic because when I'm doing it, I really feel like I'm upshifting, downshifting a car, trying to like get it at the perfect point, go into the corner a little bit fast, but maybe hit it at the right moment, that kind of thing. So I love Formula D as well. It's one of my favorite games. Certainly one of the most influential games for me, and one of the games that got me into gaming, and it would certainly be somewhere on my top whatever games list. I don't know how high, but I love that game for what it is. Okay, that was a weird aside about that. Anyways, great question. Thanks for it, and I will see you in 2 weeks.